Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Anupama. I am professor at Department of Economics, Punjabi University, Patiala. I am going to talk about module Trends in Urban Development in 20th and 21st centuries from paper Population, Urbanization and Poverty. So students, we are going to discuss about trends of urbanization in 20th and 21st century. This century has brought new challenges for urban development. Let us discuss about the positive as well as the bleak sides of urbanization in the present era. This module aims to throw light on historical trends of urbanization and development, the impact of urbanization on quality of life, the downsides of urbanization. The world today is urbanizing itself rapidly. There is no exaggeration in saying that the 20th and 21st centuries are the urbanized centuries. Today, the urban population in developing countries is growing at a higher rate than in the developed countries, leading to intensive demand for resources and skill for the efficient management of cities. This massive urbanization is taking place at much lower income levels than that witnessed in developed countries. Therefore, managing these changes in urbanization patterns will be one of the most important challenges in the next few decades. In less developed countries, where 80% of the world's population resides, central issues will be how to cope with an unprecedented increase in the number of people living in urban areas and the growing concentration of these urbanites in large cities with millions of residents. The trends of urbanization have a mixed impact upon the lives of the people living in the urban areas. Rapid urbanization has not only opened up new employment opportunities and improved the quality of life, but at the same time, it has also given rise to a number of socio-economic problems. In this perspective, the present module would throw light on the positive and downsides of rapid urbanization and its outcomes in the 20th and 21st centuries. For this purpose, first of all, we would have a look at the trends in urban growth in the 20th as well as the 21st century. Trends in urbanization. Although the cities had always existed even in the ancient times and were considered as centers of trade and the state, yet the urbanization of the population is only a recent phenomenon. In 1800, only 2% of the world's population was urbanized. By the year 1900, close to 15% of population lived in urban areas, which further increased to 30% in the year 1950. But by the year 2000, this proportion came close to 50% of the world population. Thus, the 20th century witnessed an unprecedented growth of urban population in the world. In 2010, about 52% of population was urban, and it is further expected that in the year 2050, more than 67% of the world population would be living in the urban areas. These trends can be easily observed from the figure 1. The previous figure has shown that the 21st century will be an urban century. This sets it apart from the 20th century. For the first time in human history, more people will live in cities than in the countryside. During the 20th and 21st century, not only the urban population has increased in all countries of the world, but it has also grown at a faster rate. This can be easily observed from figure 2, which shows that urban population is growing at a faster rate, and this increase in the growth rate is likely to be sustained by 2050. Another important point of the growth of urban population in the 21st centuries is that its location can be found in the developing region. In most of the industrial societies, the growth of urban population has already reached its plateau, while the developing countries are undergoing through structural changes, which goes hand in hand with urbanization. Hence, it is a developing world where the growth of urban population will be located in 21st century. It is being estimated that this growth of urban population would mainly be based upon the growth of the same in Asia and Africa. The share of Asia in total world population, which has already reached at 52%, is expected to increase up to 53% in 2050, while the share of Africa is expected to grow from 11% in 2011 to 33% in 2050. An increase in share of both of these regions in urban population would lead to a fall in share of Europe, Latin America, and Caribbean countries. However, if we look at the share of urban population out of total population in each of the region, it can be observed that every region would cross the mark of 50%, while in North America and Latin America and Caribbean, it is expected to reach close to 85%. In 2050, the share of urban population will be the highest in North America, followed by Latin America and Caribbean, and then by Europe, while Asia and Africa will remain at the lowest rank. However, it seems that Asia will be urbanizing itself at a relatively higher rate than Africa, as the gap between the share of urban population in two regions is expected to increase in 2050. There is a definite relationship between urbanization and development. Urbanization is considered to be a key feature of modern development. Nearly all countries become at least 50% urbanized before they reach middle income level status. And the urbanization rate of the high income countries is 70% to 80%. Cities generate over 80% of gross domestic product in many countries of Asia and the Pacific, and are engines of economic growth that have lifted millions from poverty. But as they swell in size and number, they are under increasing strain. Asia's cities will become home to another 1.1 billion people in the next 2 decades as the poor continue to be drawn to better opportunities. Over 200 million now live in urban slums, a number predicted to soar to a staggering 692 million by 2015. Many cities are already struggling with environmental degradation, traffic congestion, inadequate urban infrastructure, and a lack of basic services such as water supply, sanitation, and waste management. Maintaining vital economic growth while creating sustainable, livable cities for all is the biggest urban challenge facing Asia. Thus, on the one side, urbanization is associated with increase in income level, increased urban services, and on the other hand, it may also result in increasing environmental problems. Therefore, the development in urban areas should be seen as a holistic picture of all of these aspects. Let us discuss these aspects one by one. Urbanization and growth of GDP. Urbanization is always supposed to have a positive association with growth of GDP. This relationship can be easily observed from Figure 5. The figure shows that for most of the countries in the world, the per capita income starts rising only when the rate of urbanization crosses the 50% level. Up to this level, the rise in per capita income is very low, but after that, a little rise in urbanization rate leads to proportionately greater rise in per capita income. This is indicated by less elastic income curve up to 50% level of urbanization, and it's being more elastic after 50% level of urbanization is reached. Same is true for the countries in the region Asia and the Pacific. Urbanization and infant mortality and fertility rates. Since urbanization is associated with increase in urban services, of which health system is an important part, it must have been associated with fall in infant mortality rates and fertility rates as more of the health services are available. These trends can be seen from Figure 6. This figure shows the average infant mortality rates for the world during 1955 to 2010. It has been observed that as the rate of urbanization increased, the infant mortality rates declined. Most of the countries which have crossed the 80% level of urbanization have also reached the minimum infant mortality rates. Further, the urban areas are supposed to have lower growth rates of population vis-a-vis rural areas. The argument given behind these trends is that this have been possible due to increase in health facilities and increased work participation rate among women, due to which they tend to have lower family size. The fall in fertility rate along with increase in rate of urbanization has been shown in Figure 7. The figure shows that as the rate of urbanization comes close to 100%, the fertility rate is expected to come close to one birth per woman. Urbanization and educational attainments. The cities offer better and more opportunities for learning. Apart from it, the intensified competition in cities also motivates urbanites to accumulate human capital. The positive association between urbanization and education is evident in Figure 8, which is based on Asian country level data from UN for the year 2012. We can see that in these countries, the average level of education is below 5 years of formal schooling if the level of urbanization is below 30%. Let us discuss about urbanization and basic amenities of life. In general, the process of urbanization is also associated with the improvements in quality of life in terms of availability of water and sanitation, power, etc. These improvements must be viewed against the fact that they have been achieved in the presence of rapidly increasing population under difficult fiscal situation and with strained human resources for the emerging needs of public management. Progress has been noteworthy in improving access to clean drinking water sources in both the 1990s and 2000s. Similar trends of positive improvement indexes are seen for access to safe sanitation, but at a much slower pace than for drinking water. 3/4 of the countries have accelerated improvements in the 2000s in providing access to an improved drinking water source and to an improved sanitation facility. It is generally believed that urbanization rate and access to safe drinking water are positively associated with each other. This can be observed from figure 9. In this figure, the curve shows the access to safe water at different levels of urbanization. We can see that as the level of urbanization falls, the access to safe water falls. It seems that the urbanization level of 50% is essential for covering about 95% of population with safe water. Further, figure 10 has shown the progress of urban areas during the year 1990 and 2006. We can see that in the developed world, which is also most urbanized, almost 100% of the population has access to drinking water. Same is true for Commonwealth of Independent States. We can also see that the proportion of population with access to drinking water in the urban areas of sub-Saharan Africa has declined during the year 2006 as compared to 1990. In South Asia, although it has increased at a much sharper rate as compared to other regions, but still it is lower than other regions except sub-Saharan Africa. The World Bank data for 2014 shows that in 1990, almost 1.3 billion people worldwide lacked access to drinking water from a convenient protected source. By 2012, that had improved to 752 million people, which means a reduction of 41%. In developing countries, the proportion of people with access to improved water source rose from 70% in 1990 to 87% in 2012. All these improvements have actually been possible due to improvements in these facilities in urban areas. Similarly, the sanitation facilities are also higher in the urban areas. In low and middle income countries, in rural areas, only 43% of population has access to improved sanitation facilities as compared to 73% in urban areas. Figure 11 shows that the countries which have shown improvement in sanitation facilities have shown greater improvement in urban areas. Out of Asian economies, 27 are reported to improve their sanitation facilities in the 1990 and 30 economies further improved in the 2000s. Thus, we have observed that urbanization is associated with increase in quality of life, not only through an increase in per capita income, education and health facilities, as well as improvements in access to water and improved sanitation facilities. But on the negative side, urbanization is also associated with congestion, increase in pollution levels, income inequalities, and also crime rates. Let us discuss these factors. Let us now discuss the downsides of urbanization. Urbanization and increase in pollution. With rapid rates of urbanization in the developing countries, it is feared that the pollution levels increase as urbanization is closely associated with growth of slums, congestion in the residential areas, increase in industrial activity, and traffic flows. Due to increased inflow of the migrants and increase in income of the urban residents, there is an ever-growing demand for residential units, which rapidly swallows up the fallow land and the green belts of the urban areas. This leads to an increase in pollutants in cities. The anthropogenic emissions, which are defined as the pollutants originating from the human activity, has tremendously increased during the phases of rapid industrialization and urbanization. These trends can be observed from figure 12. The figure shows that the anthropogenic carbon emissions have increased in all regions of the world during the 20th century. In the year 2000, Europe, followed by East Asia, has the highest value of these emissions. Here, it should be clearly understood that the anthropogenic carbon dioxide emissions come from combustion of carbon-based fuels, principally wood, coal, oil, and natural gas. The burning of fossil fuels and extensive clearing of forests has contributed to 40% increase in atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide. If we just concentrate on the Asian economies, it is being observed that due to rapid urbanization, the carbon emissions have increased during the last 3 decades. Still, these emissions are less than that of the developed region. Currently, most of the economies in Asia and Pacific emit from carbon dioxide between a range of 1 to 6 tons per person yearly as compared to 11 tons in the developed region. However, between 1990 and 2010, 70% of the Asian economies have reported increases in per capita emissions of carbon dioxide. The other 30% of regional economies lowered their per capita carbon dioxide emissions in the 20 years. Steep price increases for oil and natural gas contributed to reductions in Central and West Asia, and phasing down higher polluting fuels helped to reduce emissions in Singapore and some other economies. The percentage change in per capita carbon dioxide emissions by a few selected Asian economies that have observed an increase in it during 1990 to 2010 can be observed from figure 13. The figure shows that Cambodia, Maldives, and Vietnam have registered the highest increase in the carbon emissions during 1990 and 2010. The economies that have registered the biggest increase have actually started with low per capita emissions, and most still had relatively low emissions by 2010, with the exception of China. Incidentally, all the economies which have registered an increase in carbon emissions have also registered a relatively higher rate of change in urbanization during the same period, and the economies which have shown a reduction in these emissions have shown a relatively lower change in their urbanization rates. But these are the economies in which more than 50% of their population already lives in urban areas. Among the economies which have shown a decline in the carbon emissions between 1990 and 2010, we may enlist Singapore, Nauru, Central and West Asian economies such as Azerbaijan, Georgia, Kyrgyz Republic, Tajikistan, etc. Out of these economies, the proportion of urban population is 100% for Singapore and Nauru and 53% for Azerbaijan and Georgia. On the other hand, Kyrgyz Republic and Tajikistan have less than 33% of their population residing in urban areas, and these countries have rather experienced a fall in their urbanization rates. Thus, it seems that Kuznets' inverted U thesis is finding its validity in the urbanization process of Asian economies as well, because the countries with increase in rate of urbanization from lower levels of the same are experiencing increase in their pollution rates, while on the other hand, the countries which have already achieved a higher level of urbanization are in the process of diminishing rates of pollution. Since most of the developing economies in Asia and other regions are in process of rapid urbanization from low levels of the same are yet experiencing rapid increase in carbon emissions, leading to increase in environmental pollution. These trends are also verified from a comparison of 5 industrialized countries with that of 10 most populous economies of Asia. Currently, Asia is a major contributor to global carbon dioxide emissions. The People's Republic of China now emits more carbon dioxide each year, which is 8.3 billion tons, than the combined total of Canada, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and the United States. These trends can be observed from figure 14. Both India and Japan emit higher tonnage of carbon dioxide than Germany. These emissions contribute to global climate change, which is expected to have particularly severe impacts in parts of Asia and the Pacific. Urbanization and crime are often related with each other. Crime is an activity which is against the law, and the fact that the linkage between criminal activities and the socio-economic development of the society is undeniable. The urban areas, which are characterized by wide disparities and where the social bindings and social stigmatization is often weak, people are easily vulnerable to corrupt practices, which in their extreme forms turn towards crime. Sociologists often point out that as the societies move from agrarian to industrial societies, they undergo rapid social changes and all the cultural values and ethics change, which lead to increase in crimes and many other problems in the urban areas. The anonymity that is provided by the urban culture, difficult times, and prevailing inequalities often allow organized crime to flourish. The World Drug Reports 2012 and 2013 have indicated that the prevalence of thefts and the use of illicit drugs among the youth is higher in the urban areas. Figure 15 clearly indicates that as the rate of urbanization increases in different countries, the number of thefts per lakhs of population also increases. It is very low in areas where rural populations dominate, and as the level of urbanization increases, we can see that the curve showing number of thefts per lakh of population rises sharply. Individualism and the anonymity among the residents of the cities gives rise to such events as nobody can recognize an unidentified person coming to the highly dense localities and committing the crime. Further, a survey of the use of illicit drugs by the young people in the European countries shows that the proportion of young people, that is those aged between 15 and 24 years, is 4.4% in rural areas and 4.6% in the urban areas. Although It seems that these ratios are a little higher in urban areas than the rural ones, but we can see that the metropolitan cities are more severely affected as 6.6% of the young population is found to be using the illicit drugs. The evolution of the complex global illicit drug problem is clearly driven by a range of factors. Socio-demographic trends such as the population's gender and age balance and the rate of urbanization are influential. Socioeconomic factors such as levels of disposable income, inequality, and unemployment also play a role. Increased levels of disposable income may enable a larger number of people to buy illicit drugs, whereas high levels of inequality or unemployment may increase the propensity to use illicit drugs among those affected. A broad socio-cultural category of drivers, including changes to traditional value systems and the emergence of a relatively uniform youth culture in many countries, also influences the evolution of the problem, though in ways that are often challenging to quantify. The demographic trends further suggest that the total number of drug users in developing countries would increase significantly, mainly due to rapid rates of urbanization, among many other factors. Besides, the urban areas also experience more incidences of sexual harassment at the workplace, trafficking of women and girls, and domestic violence. However, in all cities, the crime against the wealthy is often more publicly reported and discussed, while in reality, it affects the lives of the most disadvantaged, especially those living in slums and informal settlements, much more than the others. They are less likely to be able to secure their homes and property and often have poor police protection or attention or access to services. They are more likely to suffer any loss or disruption is more costly to them. Unequal income distribution is one of the important challenges confronting urbanization. High levels of inequality in cities can lead to negative social, economic, and political consequences that have a destabilizing impact on societies. Cities are becoming more unequal in a number of ways. Cities in Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean have some of the highest levels of income inequality in the world. And such inequality is increasing and becoming entrenched. Such inequalities of income, combined with unplanned and rapid growth, have led to a number of related inequalities, including inequalities resulting from spatial patterns of land use and tenure and access to public spaces and transport, as well as social and economic inequalities in terms of decision making and citizenship, access to health and education, and safety and security. Asian Development Outlook has found that inequality is generally greater in urban areas than in rural areas, so that urbanization can aggravate the problem of unequal income distribution. According to this report, the chief drivers of inequality are technological progress, globalization, and market-oriented reforms which have favored the urban areas more than the rural ones. And within urban areas, they have favored skilled rather than unskilled labor and the haves than the have-nots. These changes can explain many of the movements in inequality in many countries. In figure, The urban inequalities in India and Indonesia have been higher than the rural areas in all the years for which the data was available. It can also be observed that during these years, the urban inequalities have rather increased. Even in the People's Republic of China, where inequality had been lower in urban than in rural areas, urban inequality has been growing faster and surpassed rural inequality in 2010. Kanbur and Zhuang found that urbanization has been a major contributor of rising income inequalities in India, Indonesia, and Philippines, while in China it has helped in reducing the income inequalities at the national level. Let us come to the conclusion of this module. The experience of rapid and massive urbanization that occurred in 20th century has been historically unprecedented. It now seems that the trends of urbanization have now moved from north to the south. It seems that it is now the turn of Asia, and particularly of large countries like China, India, Indonesia, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, to undergo the kind of fast paced urbanization that Latin America did in the last half century. However, it is also a fact that the present phase of urbanization in southern part of the globe is characterized by relatively lower income levels than experienced by developed countries at the same level of urbanization. This will pose new challenges in terms of city management and urban infrastructure investment that will need to be made in a relatively short time span and for a growing segment of population which is moving at a faster rate towards the urban areas. While there has been a great degree of criticism regarding the ill effects of the urbanization process, but at the same time, it is also associated with better quality of life. Urban income levels have risen, urban services have continued to expand, and poverty has fallen. While on the other hand, the crime rates, pollution levels, congestion, and inequalities have been rising. These issues point towards the need of the policy attention towards meeting these challenges because the upcoming wave of rapid urbanization seems to be irreversible. Therefore, finding the solution of the related problems is the only rational policy.